My name's Dr. Mateen Jiwani. I'm a general practitioner and executive medical director, specialising in digital healthcare transformation. I've been asked to deliver the keynote at the ARC Northwest London event. My talk was designed to encourage people to understand lessons from the pandemic, but equally understand the difficulties of digital transformation in healthcare systems. Those challenges can come from the clinical side, from the user side, and more importantly, from an organisational side. And the key problems we have is we don't teach and support our individuals to understand digital transformation within systems. The more we support them in understanding healthcare management as a whole, perhaps they'll understand those key barriers that they face when they're trying to implement digital technology.
You know, one of the difficult things about being prepared for disaster is you never really get prepared for disaster. I'm very lucky. I've spent the last few years, just to tell you a little bit about me, trying to find out what I want to do. And that means I've been through different systems, acute trusts, mental health trusts, general practice, regional, just to understand how does the system work? Why is it wherever I go, apart from being just a moaning clinician, why do I struggle with the concept that things don't work? And it's partly because training has always been about the individual. As a clinician, I get trained to deal with what's in front of me. But if you start to ask me, fix this, that becomes even more challenging and really difficult. In terms of the healthcare and digital revolution, the reason it's a revolution, and possibly even reform, is because we were pushed into a corner to change at a very quick moment in time. We didn't know what to do, and we had to change. Some good change, some potentially difficult change. And we need to start understanding where those lessons are, apart from all the good that we did, because not all of us are in the room that should be in the room today. So we need to think about how we move forward and be prepared for what might be another difficult time in the coming decades and perhaps even centuries, so we put those lessons down. So if we are history, we need to teach people the lessons so that we don't repeat it in the same way. Different sectors responded differently. I kind of work in both sectors, primary and secondary. And I saw two different things going on all the time. Our colleagues in hospitals and specialised buildings were very good at the clinical deployment. Really good. The clinician said, let's do it. Let's go and see these patients and work on it. The system wasn't quite ready. Just like we're not ready day to day when we're overwhelmed in the emergency department. We do our very best with what limitations we have. So there were procedures that were stopped. Someone had to make a decision and say, stop doing all those surgeries. That's the one that's going to be the most risk related. Primary care, wow, tough. Central colleagues decided to give us advice and say, hey, shut the doors. I'm going to say it, that I didn't shut mine. And the reason I didn't shut mine is not because I was clever, it's because I'd been doing this stuff around video consulting since 2010, back when people said, he's a lunatic guy, this doesn't work. But briefly about video. Ever since medicine, science, treatment started, people have always been in the room or the space or the environment. We see people, we talk to them, we poke and prod them, and we do an exchange, a transaction of something to give them advice or treatment so they get better. For the very first time, you take that whole individual out of the room and all of a sudden everybody's upside down because they say, what do we do now? So there's a lot about learning how to put this in the right training and system so that people are prepared. And the reason I didn't shut my doors, I trained my staff before I could see it coming. And I said, this is how we're going to do it. Today, I'm going to go through what lessons we've learned. And then we're going to give you a little bit of information how you do digital transformation in a large system so that everybody is prepared to deal with the consequences of difficult situations. And if we start to learn those lessons very carefully, we might actually be in with a chance next time something like this happens. Whatever we do digital is already happening in health. We just need to somehow learn how to change and adapt it so that it's easier to digest and we make less errors and we're able to support the work that we're going to do. So keywords to take away: health, technology, use, and information. Remember that every time you write something, every time you do something. That's the message you're trying to send to people. Here's the problem with technology. We use it. Someone says to me, here, have this piece of technology. Companies come all the time and they go, I built this, it's great. It fixes the problem for all of you. And I say, fantastic. What do I do with it? Really important for people building products, people in research, people in innovation, to understand what are the pitfalls of digital acceptance and transformation within healthcare. And the most common things that we find are the education and training, being able to reflect on something and feedback, because that's what we do best. As clinicians, we understand that actually if someone tells us this works, this doesn't, you need to change this, change that, that and only then will make better, safe clinical service delivery. Risk management. Someone taught me risk management. I went, why are we not teaching this to everybody? The first thing that happens when you come out of medical school, someone gives you something and you say, oh my God, I do not know how to implement this. We need more simulation. That comes through data input from people like yourselves and me who say, here are the common scenarios. Here's what we will expect to see. Here are the things that we need to do with the technology. And the common thing people say is, how am I meant to examine someone over video? Well, you're not. Not expecting you to do that until we get into the days of haptics in the next 50 years. But hey, that's a mile away. What you're meant to be doing is using it as an elevated triage model. So you can make good decisions of when people need to be seen and when they should come in. Because surely, penny drop moment, surely seeing someone adds a little bit more value to your data gathering than just hearing them. And fundamentally, the problem was they weren't prepared. The clinicians weren't prepared. I'm going to tell you a little bit about the life cycle of a technological company, because it will start to make sense where the problems are. This is the Gartner cycle. Most of you will know this. But we have issues about the beginning. It gets exciting, right? Clinicians get excited. Oh my God, what's that? That's great. Let me see that. I want to try that. I won't buy it, but let me have it for a little bit. Then it gets to the peak and everybody's happy. The company's happy, the clinicians are happy. And then things start to happen because people start saying no. Because when you try to do things at scale and try to go into the NHS or other bodies, people start saying, wait a minute, where's the evidence? Does this work? What do you want me to do? Give this in the whole department? I don't think so. Then people just start saying no to you on email. Then people stop replying. Companies just sitting there waiting to try and see what happens. And then something trickles through, usually an event. And then people say, well, actually, we need this because we've got no other solution. So can we use it, please? And then you see a slight rise. And then it plateaus, which is funny because even though it might work, it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to expand any further. So the translational gap, which is the key to all of this, what does that really mean? It means there's a difference between what the clinical people think is the problem and what the stakeholder or the organization that develops technology thinks is the problem. So there's a gap between what the companies, the technology and the devices are doing and what we're doing as clinicians. And then, of course, let's not forget the person using the service, because we're all patients, right? So you'll have your own experiences that needs to go into that co-production. Part of it is the evidence framework that we use at the moment is not fit for digital technology. You can't go into technology and say, well, I need 10 years of evidence before I'm willing to deploy that. It doesn't work like that, I'm afraid. Technology moves so fast that it's impossible to keep up. So now academic institutions need to change the way in which they support the evidence framework by doing ongoing evaluation, sandboxing, so that you have safe scenarios where you can do some of this work over the course of 1 to 2 years and start to deploy it. Kind of do this in research. So my view is R&D will become more R&I for the future. And the development is just the undertone. Everything's developing. So it's really important to understand that as we go along. And problem solving, you need to talk. The two systems need to talk to each other and understand what the real problem is. This is the evidence framework for digital health that was brought up by NICE. You know what the problem with this is? People on the ground don't understand this. This is great strategically for those sitting in senior leadership, but it doesn't help the people on the ground know. So if I gave this to someone alongside a kit, to a clinician and said, hey, would you like to use this? They wouldn't get it. They wouldn't know what to do with this to translate it back to what they do. So we are missing a whole group of things around support and understanding of how to deliver technology. How do you tweak one thing and the whole lot get changed and you affect as many people as possible? And nowadays, even with the global work I do, it's the same thing on a country level to say, do this small change and everybody gets the benefit of it. But to do that, you need all of these things. You need to understand human factors, risk, training, and you need to understand how everything fits together. And don't forget culture. It's really important. Taking the people with you, right? It's really important. These are the steps that typically I go through with an organization. So these are the things you need to think about before we start making the step towards adopting technology. Get it under your door first. You need to know what the environment's doing. Now the challenge is education. So for me, the education is about equipping people with the right knowledge of all of those things I've talked about so that they can go away and work out in their relative specialties and fields what works, how can I use that device for my population. Don't go in and tell them how to do it. Teach them where to do it. When I got taught anatomy, I had to go and drill into the ears and have a look at those small bones. Now I can walk on them. How crazy is that? I can really just, in this space, start to do some amazing bits of education with my students. They come in virtually into the metaverse. So actually, you don't actually need to come and see me anymore. Technology is amazing. It works, just needs someone to figure out how to teach people how to use it. And then and only then, the technology will support the people to get out of this well, because that's what it should be. It should be a supportive mechanism to get out of that deep, dark place when someone gives you something that you're not prepared for, something that you have no knowledge how to use. Haven't quite understood what risk is, and we should be prepared to do more of that training and understanding and think about the consequences of producing something without your colleagues and your end users when you're building technology, when you're working with technology, when you're researching technology, and think, what does it mean to really do systems and transformation for everyone, not just the individual? Thank you. The lessons ongoing from this pandemic, we need to be supported and trained in clinical risk management, human factors, and understanding of people's needs and wants so we can triage them effectively, put them in the right place at the right time with the right access, and make sure we take all our users, all of our clinicians, and our technological partners on that journey with us.